I gotta ask you, and I want to ask you this so bad because of your relationship with Islam. Ilia Topuria is moving up. We've got a new fight, not for an interim championship, the undisputed championship. Ilia Topuria has officially left the weight class. However, they have not officially said it's Ilia versus Islam. So I'm just wondering, what are you hearing? What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of Good Guy, Bad Guy. I'm Daniel Cormier. That's Chill Sutton, Chill Pete. So we were just going through starting the show, and I somehow struck gold. You know when you just dig and you dig and you dig and you strike gold? I told you to press the brightness button. It came on. And you go, you just don't expect that from a guy that went to Oklahoma State. So I said, well, computer skills? I would not expect tech support from you. And I mean that as a compliment, okay? That was ignorant of me. Well done.
Chill.
Well done, big guy.
But then we start talking about degrees. And I said, well, I didn't even really choose mine. They just kind of gave it to me. And it's always sociology. Guess what, bro? One time, when we're all doing sociology, for the record, Chill, what's yours?
Sociology.
It's always sociology.
It's always sociology, Bradley.
Chill. One time we're all sitting there playing video games, and this guy goes, I have to go to class. It was Jamil Kelly. Bro, he's got a different degree than everyone else. History. Jamil Kelly decided to become a history major. And we all wondered why Jamil was never in our classes, because it was the whole team except for Jamil. He
didn't get the memo. He didn't get the memo. You know, another big one for athletes was also English, but that embarrassed me. Like at 18 years old, when we all speak English and we've all only spoken English, I can't believe they're giving you a degree in English. I didn't do it. I was not embarrassed for Soch because so many others did, but the English degree, still to this day, is a little bit of a surprise to me that they give out degrees for that.
Yeah, can you believe that? I bet it's hard. Like, hey, Joe, I've never been above taking like something that was easier. If it's easier, I'm in, right? You tell me where the shorter line is. You tell me the fastest way to get something, and it ain't gonna be hard. I'm always taking that option. And that's exactly what we did. Somebody figured it out, and John Smith lied to me. When I had this idea, I was gonna be a criminal justice major. John Smith told me on our recruiting trip, we've got the greatest criminal justice program in the country. By the time I got to Oklahoma State, there was no criminal justice program.
Of course.
It was all sociology.
The greatest in the country, he said. Oh my goodness. Daniel, I gotta tell you a quick story. Now I'm going back 3 weeks ago, but I'm in T-Mobile Arena. I come downstairs. In fact, I was coming down to join you to make the announcement for the Ultimate Fighter. And who's standing there? Diego Lopes. And Diego Lopes, English is not his first language. He's doing a good job, but I had a hard time communicating with him. Daniel, I left there and I told Glenn Jacob, I said, Glenn, unless I misunderstood, Diego Lopes just informed me that he is going to be fighting Volkanovski for the championship. And we both decided that I must have understood that wrong. Because that just wouldn't make sense. I said, man, there wasn't a lot to understand. He said, me and Volk, and it's for the belt. I assumed interim. But that was big news. See, Diego was breaking news to me. He knew this whole thing was going on. He knew that Ilia Topuria was walking away. He knew he was getting the nut. He fed the scoop to me. But I wasn't confident enough in my ability to understand it. I gotta ask you, and I want to ask you this so bad because of your relationship with Islam. Ilia Topuria is moving up. We've got a new fight, not for an interim championship, the undisputed championship. Ilia Topuria has officially left the weight class. However, they have not officially said it's Ilia versus Islam. So I'm just wondering, what are you hearing?
So first off, that was just a tremendous segue, Chill. That was beautiful.
Shifting gears,
that was so beautiful. What you just did was amazing. And yes, Diego Lopes was actually telling you. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago. When we want information to go out, we give it to certain people. Diego was giving you the green light. He was saying, Chael, this is you. Jump on that YouTube, make a video, start people talking. Because he must have heard. You know what we should have, and we'll get to more into that later. You know when we should have took our first clue? When we saw Diego Lopes at Oklahoma State University wrestling with the Cowboys, we should have went, he might be fighting Volkanovski. Because we know Volkanovski has that wrestling background. But none of this happens if the champ doesn't vacate the belt. Chael, when they started talking about him fighting Islam, I was under the idea or the impression that it was going to be one of those champ versus champ fights where the little guy goes up, he's still holding on to his belt. If he wins, he becomes the double champ. If he loses, he just kind of goes back down and he fights and defends his belt at 145. Topuria says no. Islam and them aren't saying much right now. They haven't said they want to fight Ilya. They haven't said or agreed to fighting Ilya. I have heard that Ilya has some other things on the docket. That's a possibility. That would be very exciting. But I'm very surprised that he's vacating right now. I'm very surprised because, Chael, he has the option. You said, I thought it would be for an interim title. Only because Ilya has the option to let them fight for an interim championship because of the year he just had in the win that he got the title from Volk and then the title defense against Max Holloway. He had the option to hold on to the belt, but he's saying, Chael, and he's going up because he feels like he's done everything at 145. One title defense doesn't feel like everything, Chael, but it's a weighted conversation because you just beat the two greatest featherweights of all time outside of Jose Aldo, right? You have Aldo, Holloway, Volkanovski, discussion over greatest featherweights of all time. The number one would be chosen from those three. You beat two of them, your legacy cemented. Do you agree that he has no work left to do at 145?
I love that you just said that because isn't this interesting? Does he have work to do? He's barely been at 145. I found out he even existed when Paddy the Baddy nicknamed him Mr. Hand Sanitizer, and that was only about 2 years ago. However, before I say he hasn't done enough work there, Daniel, they're already talking about rematches. They're already talking about putting him in there, just for example, with Volkanovski. And apparently my hypocrisy knows no bounds because I did not like the idea of Volk in a title shot. I believe that Volk is 1-3 in his last 4, and I know in his last 2 they had to use salts to wake him up, and I'm just sharing for you, to put him in a world title fight was hard for me, but not now. Volk is the right guy to go in there with Diego Lopes. That's very intriguing. And so what do you do? What do you do in the case of Topuria? We've never had a situation like this before, where when we found out that somebody was vacating, we did not get an immediate announcement about what they would be doing. Now, I don't love that idea for Islam. Islam's never really asked for anything, but he has hinted that he would like some parity. He has hinted that he really doesn't want to get in there with Sarukian. He's already done that. He doesn't really want to get in there with Oliveira. He's already done that. I can't blame him for that. He had to do 2 against Volkanovski in the same year. Just for example, Volk had a big problem. Volk was this close to beating Islam, but Daniel, he didn't burn his boats. Volk was going to wake up the following day, regardless of outcome against Islam, he was going to wake up the world champion because he wasn't putting his on the line. I think if Volk would have walked away and made a full commitment, we have a different story. I think Ilya Topuria should be committed for this. If the guy can't make weight or doesn't want to make weight, I mean, that is a legitimate opponent, Daniel, that nobody ever sees. The number one reason people retire, I maintain for you, the number one reason Khabib retired was because of that scale the day before. And if he's saying, look, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm moving up, let the boys get on with it. Let the company know. Call your shot immediately. I respect the hell out of this for Topuria. And before I can say that he doesn't have the right to move up, Daniel, we're talking about rematches for him. The way that he got to the belt, we're talking about bringing guys in that he's already been in there with. If he's to that point where he's got to start to lap the division, move him up.
Yeah, you're right. Because it was going to be Volkanovski versus Topuria too, if it was anything for Ilya at 145. And obviously we've seen that. You asked me about Islam, like what is Islam saying? Well, his manager, Rizvan Magomedov, said Topuria versus Charles should be the contender fight. That's the latest update. He said he needs to prove that he's a legit lightweight so we don't have to defeat another small featherweight. We need big fights that make sense for everyone. We already gave chances to the featherweight champ that was reigning for a long time. So what it sounds like to me, Chael, is that the Islam camp isn't that excited about this fight right now. So it also makes me feel, because that's what I heard. I heard that it was going to be Oliveira. I heard Oliveira versus Ilya, which would be just tremendous and so fun. But this statement by Rizvan makes me think that, like, that's the step. That's the step. You want to fight Islam? you got to get through Charles. Because we both know, right, Chill? Charles was scheduled for a championship opportunity. Charles was supposed to be the guy to fight Makhachev in Abu Dhabi last year, where Volkanovski stepped in again. So hearing that, I feel that Ilya will fight Charles Oliveira. And then the person who wins that will be the #1 contender for Islam's championship, which could take place. It all works, right, Chill? So if Ilya and Charles get together sometimes around April, May, Miami would be great for those guys, but that card, which we'll get to, is already so stacked. I don't know that they would add it. If they get together in May, right? June, July, August, September. Guess what fight card's always in October? Abu Dhabi. They love to put Islam in Abu Dhabi, right? You can stack those guys and somebody else could fight. The winner of that fight could fight Makhachev in Abu Dhabi. It just makes sense that it feels like Ilya and Charles will be the match, especially to me.
Okay, and for the audience that doesn't know Rizvan is very unique, okay? He's a very sharp guy, but every manager chases the money. Every manager but Rizvan. He chases competition. Rizvan is a purist. So I want to offer you that because a lot of times if a manager came out and said, oh no, why do you put Oliveira in this guy? Why don't we build the matchup? They're just looking for a bigger payday. They're looking for some headlines, not Rizvan. Now, Rizvan doesn't have the power to make that happen, but I do take him sincere that this is Islam's wish for this to happen. I love the idea, partner. We got one little problem though, and it's called precedence. Off the top of my head, but George St. Pierre walked away from a 70-pound belt. His first fight at 85 was for the strap. John Jones, more recently, walked away from a belt. His first fight when going up was for the strap. I do not believe that Ilia Topuria is going to have a #1 contenders match. I just don't believe that. However, I will drink to the concept. I will toast to the concept that I do think it's a bigger fight, and I love the idea of Ilia Topuria versus Charles, by the way. I love that.
You know, I do. I love the fight. I think it's a very fun fight. But, chill, I got to be honest, like seeing Topuria, and I don't know him personally, right? I know him through, it's a professional relationship. I don't have a friendship with Ilia Topuria. I think he's cool. He's nice. I think that he's a champion through and through. But when I see him, right, he's not a big guy. I don't feel like he's a big guy. So to hear he says he can't make 145 anymore, to me seems a bit odd because I see Makhachev. I saw Khabib as the champ. Hell, I see Chandler. And dude, Oliveira's massive. These guys are bigger, much bigger than Ilia Topuria. Do you buy that he just can't make the weight anymore? Or is it, like you said, I just don't want to fight the scale at that level? Because once I won that belt at heavyweight, and I didn't have to go back to 205 to be champ, I was done. There was nothing, they could not have given me enough money that would make me want to lose that 45 pounds, because every time you walk to that scale, you're dead. Why you don't want to do it if you don't have to?
That is a very interesting concept. Look, I am forced, not because I want to, I am forced to take Ilia Topuria at his word. Yeah. He has simply said so many things that I have thought are outrageous, and all of them turned out to be true. Listen, there is a constant with Ilia, and this does go back to the first day I learned about him, which was in Paddy the Baddy, and he got this backstage hand sanitizer and water bottles up one another. He was saying right then, let me go up. He started asking that day, let me go to 55, let me get this guy. He's only talked about 55. Now, recently, he switched that specifically to Islam, but the only consonant there is 155. I don't know that Ilia really cares who the opponent is. Look, this takes courage, and there is some rules in the UFC, and there's only a few, but we fiercely adhere to, you make the weight, particularly if you're the champion. That is so looked down and frowned upon amongst the locker room itself. For Ilia to come out with this kind of courage, knowing that rule, but telling people so he doesn't hold up anyone's life, so he doesn't hold up fans that go and buy tickets, just for example, I think he does need commended here. And I think you and I are only arguing about, should he walk into a #1 contenders fight or should he walk into a world title fight? If our current world champion doesn't yet have an opponent, I'm going to predict he goes right for the world title. But Daniel, do you know how sad that's going to be? I want to build the idea of Ilia Topuria. Do you know how handsome this guy is? Do you know how many people love him? Do you know the prime minister of the country of Spain stops what they're doing to go watch this guy? I don't want him to have the risk of getting beat on day one. I like the idea of Topuria the champion, and I don't know that I'm convinced he can deal with Islam right now.
You know what I agree? You know what's going to be our saving grace in regards to him having to fight first? Is that Islam won't fight during Ramadan, which starts at the very beginning of next month, and that it goes for a while. So I think that's why we won't see him till earliest the summer, possibly in the fall. But
is that wise though? For Ilia Topuria in the prime of his life, the prime of his earning years, he just passed up pay-per-view participation, and now he's going to sit for 6 months? Or do you use that as a suggestion that he'll take on Charles?
I'm using that as a suggestion to say he'll fight Charles first.
Yeah.
Because he won't want to wait. We haven't seen Topuria since Abu Dhabi last year. Topuria fought in October. He won't want to sit for a year. He'll want to fight sometime in the early spring and then get into that fight at the end of the year if we get through Charles.
Dale, how do you predict the fellow 55-pounders that are going to play this? I mean, Charles Oliveira better be speaking up, and he better be coming to the table soon if, in fact, Ilia is going to have somebody. Because if he doesn't and Sarukian does start speaking up, all of a sudden it's going to be Topuria versus Sarukian, and Charles is going to be the odd man out. I mean, this is not a skill that Charles has, but he needs to look at this chessboard, and he needs to make his play quickly, and he needs to make it before Arman Sarukian does.
Yeah, and Charles is so fun, and he's so good that when he asks for something, he'll get it, especially big fights in most cases. But anytime a champion vacates, Chael, obviously it leaves that division a bit in flux, but not this one. Because Dana White and the UFC were prepared for Ilia Topuria. And that's why Ilia Topuria deserves that credit that you're giving him for saying, I'm going up. I'm not going to hold the boys up. I'm not going to hold the division up. I'm not going to be selfish. I'm going to give the belt away, and I'm going to do my thing. We get Diego Lopes versus Alexander Volkanovski for the UFC Featherweight Championship. Here's the thing. We should have known when we saw Lopes in Stillwater training. We should pay attention to the clues that we get at times from these guys on social media. But I got to tell you, as much as I love this fight and I love Alexander Volkanovski, he is a guy I have a relationship with. It feels a bit to me, Chael, based on what you said. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. You were against the idea that he would get a title opportunity. He's getting it now. It feels like he's in there. If he becomes champ, no skin, nothing lost. But if he loses, he propels the young guy forward. Now Diego Lopes is truly the featherweight champion because he just beat who could possibly be the greatest featherweight champion of all time. Do you feel that? Like, it's a great fight, but Volk, if he isn't careful, hey, he becomes the honky-tonk man. When the honky-tonk man put the Warrior over, and then the Warrior went on to, like, astronomical gains.
Yeah. I do think as we're playing this thing through, and I must tell you, this information is brand new to me. Like, you and I sat down to record right after I got this, and so some of my ideas are still forming, but if I'm to guess what the UFC did, they generally like to give you news. They generally don't like to have loose ends. So my feeling is they got us there at 145. How are we going to solve the problem of having a vacated 45-pounder? Boom. They know how they're going to solve that. What do we do with Ilia Topuria? I think that might still be open. Perhaps Ramadan does play in. Perhaps we've got a few moving parts here. But Diego versus Volkanovski is a very different feel. I mean, it really is. The way that Diego fights and that pace that he puts on, I think Volkanovski's got as good of a cardio base when he's fighting at his best as anyone we've ever seen. He weaponized that even against Max Holloway, who is known for being able to weaponize that. What an interesting time, partner. And I'm also told that at 155 pounds, can I break this? Or maybe you were going to do this, but Paddy the Baddy versus Michael Chandler, not for nothing, but I asked for that fight. I mean, that was one, that match. I believe Paddy the Baddy is 2 fights away from a world title. Now, they got to be the right 2 fights, but Michael Chandler, that's the right fight.
Mm-hmm. It's the right fight also because Michael Chandler is going to fight him in a way that's going to be a fun fight, right? But do you lend anything to that idea? Especially when I give you this stat right here, right? Volk is fighting Diego Lopes for the belt. Volkanovski, I'm not exactly sure what his age is, but he is over 35 or 35. Yeah, he's 36 years old. Fighters below 170 pounds, no, 155 and below, 0-14 in title fights. 0-14 in title fights. So do you give that any validity, what I just said? Man, is this guy going to be...
Sure.
Are we
The last time I got tested was TJ Dillashaw at 37 years old, and that stat was out there. I remember when Andrew gave it to us, he said, man, if TJ gets this done, he was going to take on Sterling. I remember Andrew saying that'll be the first time that anybody over this age and under the weight of 170 gets it done. Look, I do think that it matters. The time is now for Volkanovski, and Volkanovski has definitely done some good work over there. I just didn't love the idea of him getting the title shot right away, because that would mean that he cuts in front of Diego Lopes. And if you're looking at a guy that's 1-4, regardless, or 1-3 in his last 4, regardless of how stiff the competition, versus Diego, who's won his last 5, not to mention he agreed to cover the spread at 3 different weights on International Fight Weekend. He was supposed to fight at 45, then he passes 55, gets in there with a 65-pounder. I mean, I did feel like we owe him something. He needs to be in there for some kind of a belt. So at 45, I'm just sharing for you, like, that's interesting, but I do support it. And maybe I moved on too fast, but please tell me, when you saw Chandler versus Paddy the Baddy, you must have, as the fan in you, you must have popped, man. That's a big drawing contest right there.
I popped, Chill. I popped. You know what was funny watching last night, Dana do it? He's like reading comments as he's on his Instagram live. And he goes, oh, wait. So he's a fan. Dana's a fan of this thing, man. You know how much this dude, he likes it. And he goes, oh, so you guys like me doing lives better than just making videos announcing fights? Okay, I'll maybe consider just doing lives from now on. So in real time, you can see that he's like interacting with the comments and going, maybe this is a better way to do these fight announcements, right? Where I go live to the consumer. Hey, there were 42,000 people watching that Instagram live. That's a massive number. And when he said Paddy was going to fight Chandler, it elicited a bigger reaction in terms of comments than any I'd seen. There's 2. 1, that excitement for that fight, and then wait, what happened to Shavkat when they announced Belal Muhammad fights Jack Della Maddalena instead of Shavkat Rakhmonov? Dude, this is a big fight. I love the idea that Michael Chandler gets to fight in Miami. He trains down there in South Beach. I love the idea that Paddy Pimblett gets an opportunity. You know, one of the problems at 155 is that these top 5, 6 guys have been unwilling to give the next guy, like you say, drop the ladder down and see if they can climb. Michael Chandler seems to be at a point in his career where he's going, I'll leave that ladder for the next guy, see if he can climb the mountain. But if he can't, that'll be a massive win for Chandler. But one thing Paddy Pimblett better realize, Shale, he cannot get hit by Iron Mike, because Mike will shut your lights out with those big right hands. But I think Paddy looks so impressive against Bobby Green. I've never seen him look better.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, the way I used to speak about Paddy is no longer how I see him. I mean, I used to kind of think this thing was a sideshow. I thought he'd be good for selling some tickets in a very specific region, and then he got a haircut like this old band called the Monkees, and he's kind of got something funny to say. I used to laugh with Paddy, and then I met him. And Daniel, he is not what you would think. First off, he's surrounded with professionals. This might surprise you. In his personal life, Paddy's married with 2 children. I mean, Paddy's a man. You got to look at this new kid on the block. He's not like that, and he is growing between fights. He's already dealt with adversity. He's already dealt with an injury. He's dealt with controversy. He came back with it from it all. And I love what you're saying about that Bobby Green fight. He showed skills that we didn't even know he had. I mean, this is a hard fight. These 2, Chandler and Paddy, I saw them together. Somebody happened to have a camera backstage at an event when Chandler and Paddy met each other. Now, Chandler was being put to the side to go against our biggest draw in Conor McGregor. So he was kind of powerful at that time, and Paddy had only had a couple of fights. And I remember when they met, and then Paddy left, and they left the camera on Chandler and said, hey, what do you think? Would you ever fight him? And Chandler said, no. He said, I love that guy. I wish him the best. I will be long gone by the time he works his way up to the top 5. So it is one of those matches that I don't think people expected, but that they wanted to see. And I'll add one more thing for you. regardless of Mike Chandler's coming off a loss, I have followed him since his days as a collegiate athlete at Missouri. You don't want Chandler coming off a loss, partner. That's the last time. You do not want an angry and motivated Michael Chandler. It's a very different Michael Chandler. I love this fight. Of all the announcements, man, this popped off the page for me the strongest.
Yeah, this is a major fight at 155, and it's moving day, right? I love when it's moving day in divisions where you get an opportunity for a young guy to truly cement himself as one of the best in the world. Because you know what's funny about fighting, Chill? If you get that chance, especially early, and you get there, you usually stay there until your time is done. So when you get a top 5 guy, when you get a guy that has been at the top for a long time, then you beat him. When you take his spot, you stay there until another guy, a younger guy, years and years down the road, come and take your spot. It's just the way it happens. We even had that with Gilbert Burns, has been in the top for a long time. He's fighting against Michael Morales. That's another great fight and another opportunity for Morales to try to take his spot. Dude, it's crazy.
The non-retired Gilbert Burns, we might add.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Gilbert Burns, who is not retired.
Let me stop that. I forgot about that. I don't want your new phone number to get out. Like, you gotta be very careful. All right, chill. So Gilbert Burns, talking about 170, the champ is Belal Muhammad. Belal Muhammad was supposed to fight Shavkat Rakhmonov, right? That was well known. Shavkat's hurt. Shavkat was hurt, I imagine, when he fought
Ian Gary.
In Gary. But sorry, I just got direction. We have to go back. Patricky Pitbull's coming to the UFC. Finally.
Wow.
In Miami. And he's fighting Yair Rodriguez. Chill. Patricio Pitbull is fighting in Miami. The Pitbull brothers are tremendous strikers. They're very durable. They're insanely powerful. And they hit as hard as 2 small guys I've ever seen. But Patricky's here. Look, dude, Patricky's also signed to the UFC. So, okay, Jake, who's fighting in Miami? Is it Patricio or Patricky? Because you're putting 2 and 3 names. Okay, Jail, this dude's going crazy. He's like, I said Patricky Pitbull. He goes,
so which one is it? You got me curious. All I knew was Pitbull. I couldn't help you out there. I don't know either.
Patricio Pitbull versus Yair Rodriguez. But he's like, I said Patricky. He goes, no, Patricio. I'm like, okay. Then I see and Patricky. So come on, dude. You getting me out there. But Patricio Pitbull, the champion. He was the Bellator champion as he gets his release and heads over to the UFC. What's the excitement level for that? He immediately gets one of the best featherweights in the world.
Okay, two unsung heroes. I mean, this whole shit doesn't move forward without Sean Shelby and Mick Maynard. And there's been about 5 times in my life, Daniel, where I have read a fight, grab my phone and text them and just say, great job or thank you.
Yeah.
This is one of those times. I mean, Pitbull's as nasty as they come, and it's like people have forgot Yair Rodriguez. Yair Rodriguez is out of a video game. He is completely, doing techniques and moves that I would have to compare him like to say John Jones, where they'll come out and they'll do something where you and Anakin Rogan don't even know how to tell the crowd what it was because you've never seen it before. I mean, Yair Rodriguez is the guy, man. He is the most technical and dynamic fighter in that weight class. And Pitbull is a stone-cold brawler. This is an old-school contest. And generally, when we talk about old school, we talk about a grappler versus a striker. No, these are 2 strikers, but 2 totally different strikers. You got one that's dynamic. He's going to run up fences and jump off backwards and hit you in the mouth with a toe. Versus, man, one's going to come out there like Mike Tyson, put his and just start swinging. Pitbull brothers are awesome. I trust that our audience knows who they are, but if they don't, they're in for a treat. And frankly, he belongs in the UFC.
Yeah, belongs in the UFC. They're in for a treat to watch these guys, but I have a sneaky suspicion we're going to see some of that grappling from Yair Rodriguez. Because for as good of a striker as he is, Pitbull is one of the guys or the type of guy that makes you rely on your secondary skills. Because for as good of a striker as you may be, he can put your lights out. And I don't know that the dangers that you have to go through when fighting him are worth it if you have another path to victory. And I got an idea that we might see that from Yair Rodriguez. Chill, before we go, let's talk about 170. Belal Muhammad was supposed to fight Shavkat. Shavkat fought Ian Gary hurt. We did that earlier, right? But now he fights Della Maddalena, who was supposed to fight Leon Edwards in England. My question to you is this. Are you surprised that they moved Jack Della into the championship opportunity, but not Leon Edwards as a rematch? Right? Because
Daniel, if I had a magic wand and I could change something about our industry, and I realize this is hypothetical and you couldn't do it in reality, but I believe in forfeits. I've always believed in forfeits. I grew up from a competitive wrestling background. If a match doesn't happen because one guy pulled out, I believe the other guy should advance. And I got to tell you that because Jack has said yes to a few fights. And I don't know if people know he should be getting credit for it. He said yes to Kamaru Usman. I don't know what happened there, but it wasn't on Jack's side. Jack said yes to Leon Edwards, which was in a different continent, by the way. Again, 2 world champions he agrees to fight. Something happens in both of them. I think that's an advancement by Jack. As far as I'm concerned, he just slid past 2 world champions. He should be fighting for the belt. I love the idea. I wish Rakhmonov well. I think that Belal Muhammad's life has just gotten very different. I mean, those are wildly different matchups. Not to mention to have a little bit more time to prepare for Rakhmonov can never be considered a bad thing. I see why Jack got this opportunity, but for the people that can't, I will just remind you, he agreed to Kamara, a world champion. He agreed to Leon, a world champion. If he got past them both without throwing a punch, good for Jack.
Yeah. He got past both of them. I've never been more confused as to the hesitancy to give a guy who was a champion and won the belt, defended the belt, in a rematch like Leon Edwards, right? Just seems like they moved on. Maybe it was the dominance in which he lost his championship to Belal Muhammad. You know, I really don't want to see that fight again because I know the story, right? But Jack Della Maddalena is a very exciting fighter. He's a tremendous striker, and he really does have all the skills in the world. My worry or my thought is with the way Belal Muhammad has been fighting recently, the pressure, the wrestling, he seems to be a nightmare of a matchup for Jack Della Maddalena. But at the end of the day, fights happen for a reason. We don't know the result, and you never know what goes on inside that octagon. And Jack Della Maddalena has the skills to unseat Belal Muhammad. It's a great fight, and it's a good fight for the division if Shavkat can't go. But again, it's one of those young guys, Cheo, that has worked his way up through the UFC. He's undefeated, and now he's getting an opportunity to become a world champion. If he becomes the world champ, after Ilya was an undefeated world champ, we would have multiple guys that we have seen grow through the UFC ranks, stay undefeated until they get to the world championship, and that's always very, very special. This weekend in Seattle, Henry Cejudo takes on Song Yadong. Can you believe Henry Cejudo is 38 years old? He was a kid when we were all wrestling, Chael. He was an Olympic champion at 21 years old. He's 38. What can we still expect from him at 38? He's saying all the right things. He's saying he wants to make one more run. He's saying he wants to fight Marab again and get a championship opportunity. But what can we expect to see from Triple C come Saturday night in Seattle?
The biggest consistency with Triple C is the inconsistency with Triple C. I mean, even with his messaging partner, look, he could go out there and fight Song, win that fight, and retire. He could go out there, fight Song, lose that fight, and retire. I was surprised they even got the fight. In fact, one thing that I found most compelling was that he and Dominic Cruz were going to have to be in the back of the locker room together. I mean, This is not the kind of fight that Triple C takes. This is a main eventer on pay-per-view for world championships. This is none of those things. The big question is, what does Henry see where this can take him? And that is almost an impossible guess. Like the mind of Triple C, what drives and motivates him? I mean, this is a guy that skipped a year of high school, all of his years to college, went off to freestyle and brought home the youngest gold medal that wrestling had ever seen. He's an interesting guy, but he beats right the tick and the beat and the drum, as they say. I don't know what he sees here. I will take him at his word. I believe right now he wants to get through Song. I believe he wants to get himself to Marab. But if anything throws him off that course, a 38-year-old Henry Cejudo is not going to be one of the guys. That's what I predict. He is not going to be one of the boys that's out there for a good workout, talk about what once was. He either has a clear path to gold, and as soon as he sees that light dim, I think he's going to say goodbye. And one of the things I am most interested in his fight with Song is I'm not convinced, even in victory, this isn't his last walk. And that's a secret that only he would know. But I do feel that way going into this weekend.
It's so crazy, man, how it's just time, right? Time and decisions. When we left Jacksonville, after he beat Dominic Cruz to defend his championship, he said, I'm walking away. And then he walked away for 3 years without fighting. Could you imagine, Chael, sitting with Henry Cejudo in the back, back then, he's young, right? He's 33 years old. He's on top of the world. And he made that decision, comes back at 36, and now he finds himself trying to work his way back at 38. You cannot get time back. And I believe that that was a mistake. He should not have walked away back then, because you never know when that burn inside you starts to flare up and you go, I want to feel exactly what I felt that night. But you don't realize that when you make those decisions, you're making that road so far away, but you can't see it in the moment because you're living it. You're living with the belt. You're living with the money, the fame, that you're the best in the world. And when you've been the best in the world your whole life, think about that, Chael. You and I became All-Americans, and we were happy. We were wrestling All-Americans, but we weren't the best in the world. I was never the best in the world until I got to fighting. And even that, I had lost to John Jones, so people could say, maybe you weren't the best in the world. Henry Cejudo was the best in the world at 20, and then he stopped wrestling because it's kind of what he does, right? It's kind of like, almost like this, the way his life goes. He becomes the best, then he takes a step away. He probably was the best in the world until he was about 25, but he was not wrestling. Then he starts to fight. He becomes the best in the world. He was the best in the world in high school and in 17-year-olds. 50. He just has always been the best in the world. So how does he live as not the best in the world? But now he longs for it. And at 38, it's hard to do that, man. It's hard to recapture that when you don't have youth on your side.
Daniel, I know time is ticking down, so I'll say this fast, but boy, it appears to be a theme. I just can't relate to it. I was never a world champion. I wanted to be every day of my life. I could never imagine being so good that I would give a world championship back. But Henry Cejudo did. By the way, George St. Pierre did. By the way, John Jones did. By the way, Ilia Topuria did yesterday. Ilia Topuria is waking up today trying to get to a world championship, trying to just get a fight with Islam. He was the world champion yesterday. So to give it back, to try to pursue it today, because that creates a hunger. I mean, this is what the greats do. These great artists, man, there's a fine line in genius and insanity. And some of these greats, what they have to do to stay motivated is very hard for the rest of us to relate to. But Henry Cejudo has got it right this far. I will just tell you that he does have some kind of an idea, whatever that might be, that he will not be revealing to us until he gets a microphone after that fight. And for now, I will leave it at that.
Man, that's awesome. That's awesome. Chael, another great show, man. Chael, another great show, man. That was great thoughts on Henry Cejudo and the best in the world, because you're right. To just give it up is nuts. To go chase it again is absolutely insane. No.
Could you imagine?
No. Absolutely insane. Chael, I still regret crying when I lost in the Olympic semifinals going, I didn't come here for a bronze. I don't want a bronze medal. Chill. Then you know what's crazy? Some of them dudes started testing positive for steroids a couple years ago. You remember that? They started retroactively giving medals. They stopped in 2006. I was like, go to 2004, please, go to 2004. Because I just knew Dari was on steroids.
For sure.
I would have died.
Sure he was. Come on.
Chill, I would have died for that bronze medal. I would have died for that bronze medal. All right, guys, for Chael Sonnen, I'm Daniel Cormier. We will see you on Monday. Until next time, peace.